Kung balibaran bitaw ta, we tend to ask ourselves and we tend to have self-doubt asking, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I do not meet the qualifications or the standards they were looking for. Welcome to the pilot episode of the Voice Next Door podcast. I'm Kevin Imperial, and for today's episode, we are going to talk about your failures. Why your failure is a blessing. Now, it's very common for people to have self-doubt, especially when we receive rejection despite of all the efforts that we put into, or if we meet uncertain circumstances that we did not see coming. It's very common for people to have self-doubt, self-blame, or even to be locked in a state of anxiety with all these things happening. Now, before we dig into the topic of failure, well, let me remind you that failure is just a perception. It's all in a person's mind. And even if it was true, failure is the end result of who you were, not of who you are. So let's be clear on that. And many people, or many of us, would tag failure to exist if we hit these key indicators in life of failing. One good example is your financial status. If you are not earning much, or if your earnings do not meet your finances, that's one thing. Another would be your social status. How do the people around you see you? Or are they seeing the character you are trying to portray or the character that you have worked or built over the years? Next would be your health issues. And lastly, in general, the life choices that you made throughout the years. All of these things are just part of what your perception is about failing and when it comes to being successful. So come to think of it, the failure that you have set for yourself is just a mindset. It's all your personal perception on the things or on the current circumstances that you have faced. Well, always remember that everything happens for a reason. We cannot control everything, and there are just things that are way beyond our limits and control. We do not dictate everything that happens in our life. Next would be there is always a blessing in receiving a no instead of a yes. It goes the same with the saying, man's rejection is God's protection. It always is and it always will be. Kung balibaran bitaw ta, we tend to ask ourselves and we tend to have self-doubt asking, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I do not meet the qualifications or the standards they were looking for. Well, that's normal. It's part of you being human. But always remember that some things are just way out of your hands. That's part of life, and that's part of you being a human being. Next would be guideposts. And what do I mean by guideposts? Well, these are events or these are circumstances that would lead you to where you really belong. Like, there is always bliss beyond the inconvenience. So, katong tanang ni balibad nimo, katong tanan nga ni reject nimo, that's part of the journey for you to serve your real purpose. So ayaw kagul, all of those things are just part of the master plan. You haven't reached your end goal yet. So stop the self-doubt and stop the self-blame game. Enough of those. And lastly, avoid toxic people. It's very common, even in your circle of friends, others would say, ikaw manggod, pataka man lang kung kuan, or saya nga bay, dapat unta ingon ani imong gibuhat. No, you can't say that because wala gyud pagmahay nga mahitabo sa unahan gyud. It's always the end result of your action. The same with your perception of failure. It's just the end result of what you did in the past. I'm not pretty sure what your struggles are as we speak or as you listen to this podcast, but I do hope that somehow, in some ways, I was able to transpire something that could lift up your troubles and doubts. And always remember, When you hit rock bottom, there is no other way but to go up. And you know what? All of those struggles, katong tanang kalisod, katong tanang rejection, katong moments of doubts nimo, as you go through life, and if you succeed at the end, all of those parts become legendary chapters of the whole story that you have made for yourself. So if you think that all of those were weak points, well, I tell you, my friend, all of those are moments of strength. You might not be able to see it right now, but hopefully soon, when things go back to normal, if things get better, if new opportunities would open for you, well, all of those things become wonderful moments. Maybe for now of doubts, but soon moments of greatness and moments of strength, I would say. And aside from the struggles that you have within yourself, there will always be moments of doubts. Doubts not from your end, but from the people whom you trust and whom you love. Sometimes it could be from your circle of friends or from your family and relatives. And if that moment comes, well, you can say to their faces that yes, I have failed, but I am not a failure. And keep in mind at the back of your head, always think this is not the end of the game yet. I am not done yet. And when the time comes, well, all of these people will be in front of the VIP seat row to applaud and to witness what you have amassed. Well, that sums up the pilot episode of the Voice Next Door podcast. I'm Kevin Imperial, and always remember your mental health matters.